Evening, everybody. Thanks for joining us in today's webinar. We will be officially starting by 7:05. Let some more folks join us, and then we will officially begin with our official presenter and official launch of the webinar. Just hold on for a second. We will be joining soon back with official start. Good. So I think good evening once again. I think we are getting more and more audience getting into the room now. So far we have 31 or so people have joined us and attendees. Welcome everybody to this official Project Management Institute UAE chapter webinar. We will be taking some more time to allow for more people to join us. So we will officially start by 7:05 as I just mentioned. Just stay with us and stay tuned. Here you go. We are getting more and more guys in. Good. Good evening, everyone. Good evening. Thanks for joining us so far. We are just waiting for a few more individuals and participants to join us. Just a couple more minutes, and then we will officially begin this much anticipated topic for the today. We will officially launch in 2 more minutes. Just stay tuned with us. We'll officially start by 7:05. Okay, so I think we are good to go now. So welcome once again for the people who have joined recently. Good morning and good evening to all of you who are here tonight with us. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to PMI UAE Chapter's today's webinar. And the topic of today's webinar, as you all are aware about, is the environmental impact and green transformation. Okay, so to officially announce myself, I'm Anshul Chaube and I'm your moderator for today's webinar here tonight, and I am joined by my colleague at the back end, Olido Jones. Before I over to you, Nisreen, today's our esteemed speaker, allow me to give a brief introduction about our PMI UAE chapter. Following the presentation, we are going to have a short discussion as well in terms of question and answer, where speaker, Ms. Nisreen, and myself will do our best to accommodate all of your questions within the allocated time frame. We encourage all of you to post your thoughts on chat and interact with us to make the webinar much more conversational and much more engaging. In regard to your questions, please post them to the question and answer section. It will also give us a heads up to our esteemed speaker, Nisreen, as to how many questions we are going to expect from the audience so that we can keep check the timing of the webinar as well and respond them appropriately. So allow me to share my screen now, just to give you a brief introduction about what we are in terms of PMI UAE chapter. Okay. So as I mentioned, today's webinar we are going to host with our esteemed speaker, Nisreen Elsaim, for environmental impact and green transformation. Before that, let me just introduce the PMI chapter and what we are. We are world leader and we work on behalf of Advanced Project Management Professional Institute worldwide, and we work as a part of US Institute of Project Management. Our PMI UAE chapter, we are basically top 5 chapters among globally in terms of number of counts of the members. And of course, this chapter is a US-based project management institute run 100% by the volunteers only. We are also passionate about project management as a professional and personal development. And also we definitely encourage networking and education. We are 100% dependent on you and the people like us who are basically activating and participating in these webinars and make this as interactive and integrative as possible. So we also encourage all of you to become the member if you are not so far, and then also help us in the furthermore presentation and helps in terms of questions and answer. These are our PMI UAE chapter board members. As you can see over here, there are some more people who are yet to be joined with us. As a part of the PMI UAE chapter, we are having the new and enhanced benefits now. As you can see along the 4 pillars, those are networking, learning and knowledge sharing, career growth, and events. Today's webinar actually is the part of events pillar, which we were categorizing under diversified webinar section, as you can see there. And this is our all the list of our collaborative partners who have been helping us in the sponsorship and also making us availing all the different presenters and speakers. PDUs. So this webinar will automatically allocate you 2 strategic PDUs, and those will get automatically credited to your account within the 4 weeks period. You don't need to claim separately for that. Please help yourself to engage with the panelists through the question and answer, and please note that be engaged with the panel and then keep it through to the end in order to allow to have your PDU allocated to you. If you don't get into PDUs, please feel free to mail us on info@pmiua.org. To find anything more about our upcoming events and webinars, please feel free to join our different social media channels, and also feel free to visit our website called www.pmiua.org. Okay, so this is so much about our PMIUI chapter now. And let me now take the opportunity to introduce our speaker today, Ms. Nisreen Elsaim. She is an environmentalist and climate activist, started in 2012 with her bachelor's degree in physics from the University of Khartoum, Sudan. She pursued her master's degree in renewable energy from the same university. As a general coordinator of Youth and Environmental Sudan platform, she also helped the working youth in networking. And also Ms. Elsaim is the chairperson of Youth Sudan Organization on climate change. As a part of many regional and international platforms, Nisreen led and mentored a large number of young people within PAGJA and Abu Dhabi Youth Voices. Nisreen is also a junior negotiator with African Group of Negotiators in Technology Transfer, focusing on the policies of the countries and climate change and the renewable energy as a segment. She also wrote several policy papers under climate change, renewable energy, gender, and youth empowerment. In 2020, Nisreen basically helped us as a kind of first cohort from the Marine Initiative from Human Rights Defenders, which is also initiated from the French president. So without any further delays, and our PMI members and guests, please welcome Ms. Nisreen Elsaim, and the floor is over to you, Nisreen, for taking us through the informative session going ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I am also very glad to be here with you today. I just finished the World Green Economy Summit here in Dubai. It was a very big gather for people who really cares about sustainability and care about renewable energy and shifting to green economy and green energy consumption. It was intense discussions, and I am glad to be here with you today. I will start my presentation because it's a bit funny. When I was checking or registering for the event so I can receive the Zoom link, I found that it's written in the registration form that the webinar will speak about recent environmental causes and challenges, advice on government support on environmental agenda, green transformation project in relation to project management, renewables and carbon emissions. And I was like, oh my God, I need a full year to actually cover all of this. I can give a 1-week training in each subject. So these 5 subjects and I need 5 weeks specifically to finish all of this. So I am very much touching base on the basics, and I'm focusing more on the basic science and knowledge on climate change. And then, of course, we'll have a discussion also with you as the audience regarding the sustainability projects and stuff like this. And then we might finally talk about the international era and the international negotiations and discussions regarding climate change itself, just to give you a little bit of what's happening in the world. So I will now share my screen and we get ready. Give me just 1 minute to share my screen. climate change impacts, vulnerability, and adaptation. And just to like try to break down some of the terminology that we use in the climate change field. And I have to tell you, we have a lot of acronyms and a lot of terminologies in climate change. One of my colleagues, me and her, we were joking, and we tried to count how many acronyms or shortcuts that we have in one session of the climate change discussion, only one session, which was like 1 hour and a half. And I stopped counting at 127. So in one session, we had even more than 127 acronym or shortcut. So climate change impacts and vulnerability. And vulnerability means the weaknesses or the weak points of the communities regarding climate change and how they actually deal with it. And of course, adaptation means to be able to live and do not normal, but semi-normal life within the challenges that the climate change is actually putting on us. Okay, so how does climate change happen? This is the question that we normally get asked about. So simply, let me put the spotlight. Yes. So we have the sun, and we have, let's say this is 100% coming out of the sun. Normally, the outer atmosphere reflects 20%, the inner atmosphere and the dust and the clouds and etc. They also reflect 40%. So 20% and 40% is 60%. And we have here 40% coming into the ground inside of the planet Earth. Normally, oceans absorb what they need to make rain, and the green cover absorb what they need for their process for growing, and the rest normally goes outside to the external external space, and we only consume what we need in the planet. Now, and because something we called greenhouse gases, they play the role of gatekeeper. So the energy that gets in, even if it's not needed, and the Earth already took what they need from the planet, the greenhouse gases works as a shield and does not allow the extra energy to go out. And that's actually how climate change and of course at the beginning the global warming happened, by hosting or keeping the extra energy that is not needed for the planet inside of the planet by the greenhouse gases. Okay, now I spoke a lot about the greenhouse gases, but what are they? First of all, the size of the circle shows how much emissions, how much emissions the gas actually have. So as we see here, the green circle is the biggest circle, and it's the CO2, carbon dioxide, and it's there because simply the highest gas from emission is the carbon dioxide. And then secondly, we found methane, CH4, each smaller ball, but also, or smaller circle, but also bigger than the rest. And the methane is also one of the very important greenhouse gases. Then number 3, we find N2O, which is nitrous oxide, and it's also one of the very common greenhouse gases. They are normally 6 as you see, but the other 3 are somehow less than the first 3, and we have the HFCs, which is the hydrofluorocarbons, and then we have the PFCs, C's, which is fluorofluorocarbons, and then we have the SE. As I mentioned earlier, the size of the ball shows how much emissions that is there in the atmosphere from that gas, but also it shows how much damaging this gas is. And the other three, or actually the other three gases, the hydrofluorocarbons and the fluorofluorocarbons and the SF, are actually more dangerous than the first three, but because they are very much little in the nature and their concentration is really not high, it's causing less problems than the CO2, the CH and N2O. And of course, one of the major question is where these greenhouse gases come from. Well, it's also very much written. We all know that the CO2 comes as emissions of burning any organic material, and in this case, we are talking about fossil fuel. We know that the methane comes from the fermentation of the meat, and the aggressive farming of animals that produce meat, like pigs, like cows, like or chicken and other things. The nitrous oxide also comes from the soil, and it's used normally as um, I forgot the word in Arabic, but it's used normally, yes, as pesticide to the soil of the farm. And then the hydrofluorocarbons is used in cooling, like in the ACs, in the freezers and stuff. And now countries or the governments also banned this kind of gas, and shifted to another gas called the fluorofluorocarbons. And it's also less it's less existing in nature, but the impact of it is very big. Okay, as I mentioned, I want to start with the basic informations and make sure that everyone are in the same page. So the climate change is not global warming, and global warming is not climate change. These are two different terminologies, and it means two different things. Sorry. Just a second, sorry. I'm so sorry for the stop. Someone from the reception at the hotel called me. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, climate change is not global warming, and global warming is not climate change. They are total different terminologies, and they mean different things. So climate change means regional weather change, but it means regional weather change in a long time, and long time means between 25 years to 30 years. So any weather changing less than 25 to 30 years is not called climate, it's called weather change. So whenever you talk about climate change, please remember that you're talking about, if you are talking about the current climate data, then we are talking about today until 30 years ago, which was like before I was born. And if you're talking about the climate change in the future, then you're talking about today until 30 years in front. And that's why a lot of the 2030 agenda, the 2050 agenda, because they measure the climate variability every 30 years. But the global warming is the increasing in the temperature, and I will describe it even more. So if we understood these two things, we will know that global warming is the problem that's caused climate change. Okay, so increasing temperature worldwide is the reason why we have climate change, but they are not the same thing. We need to differentiate between these two things. Now to explain more about the global warming, I will use my whiteboard.
Nisreen, you're on mute.
Yes, I am just trying to bring my whiteboard.
No problem.
So we talked about global warming, and just to explain it to you a little bit. So global warming is the rise of the temperature, the average temperature of the planet. And what we mean by average temperature of the planet is, let's say this is the Earth. We have here, we have here, and we have here. Can someone tell me what is this? And what is this? And what is this? And of course, we have something here and something here. And if I may give you a hint, this is the equator. It's a bit complicated to do it with the keyboard. And this is the North Pole. Not here, but here. Here, this is the North Pole. And this is the South Pole. I think you are now able to guess what is this and what is this. If someone guessed, please write it in the chat, so we can move forward. Any guessings of what is this and what is this?
We are getting some answers over there in the chat. Tropic of Cancer, Tropic of Capricorn.
Yes, thank you very much. So what is the Cancer is up or down? The Cancer is here or here?
We're getting response, Cancer is up.
Are you sure? If Cancer is up, then what is down?
Down is Capricorn, as per Sanket Mishra.
Are you sure, guys? Please don't embarrass me. Are you sure?
So far, audience looking like yes, they are.
Okay, perfect. So if we assumed, I will just change the color so it's a bit obvious for you. If we assume that in the normal case, in the pole, it's minus 50. I'm just giving an example. These numbers are not true. I'm just giving an example. And if it is, for example, 10 here at the Cancer equator. And then if it is plus 10, yes, of course. And if it's plus 25 in the equator, this went too far. Sorry, I'm not the best artist for today. 25. And here it's also plus 10. And here it's minus 50. Minus 20 rays. Yep. This is minus 10. And this is 20. Minus 10 here, minus 10 here, and plus 20 here. Oh, this is plus. Why am I? Let's make it 20 also, so we can just get out of this. $20, and here also 20. Yes, so now we have minus 20 plus 10 plus 20 plus 10 minus 20. What is the total? What is the total of this equation? Come on, guys. Answers in the chat box, please. What is the answer of this equation? And Kel, do we have answers in the chat box?
Yes, we are getting some answers there with some zeros around.
So what is the final answer?
Somebody's writing 10. Somebody's writing 170 as well. A lot of zeros, by the way.
Good. So everyone who wrote 0, I clap for you. This is minus 20 and plus 20. This is 0, and this is plus 10 and plus 10. Then it's plus 20 minus 20 is also equaling 0. So this is the total is big 0. And normally when the total is 0, then this is a bad sign, but not in the global warming. This is the normal equilibrium situation where the outcome of the summation of the different temperatures around the world should be 0. But now, because of the global warming and because of the climate change, we have here -10, for example, instead of -20, and here we have +20 instead of it's the 20 is not doesn't want to be written. Here, yes, 20 instead of +10, and here +25, for example, instead of +20, and the same down here. So we have +20 instead of +10, and we have -10 instead of -20 in the South Pole, -10. So what is the result of this equation? -10 plus 20 plus 25 plus 20 minus 10. What are the answers we are getting?
45. We're getting some answers there.
And come on, guys. I know a lot of people doesn't like math, but I'm a physicist, so we have to deal with math a lot. So
a lot of 45. A lot of 45.
Yes, so we have -10 and -10. This is -20, -20 plus 20 is 0, and then plus 25 plus 20 is equal to 45. And this is exactly what it is, the global warming. As I mentioned earlier, these are just numbers to make the situation more understood. But now we are at 1.2. All of these problems that we're talking about is at 1.2 Celsius, and the whole Paris Agreement is talking about 1.5 until 2 degrees Celsius, which is the maximum, 2 degrees. And if it's 45, then we are definitely burning. And normally there's no Earth. Maybe we become Mercury or something, another planet, but not planet Earth, definitely. So this is what we mean by the average temperature of the Earth is raising up. It means the whole system together, not only one area here or an area there. Thank you for doing this exercise with me very effectively. Although it's, as I said earlier, a lot of mathematics. So now we understand the difference between climate change and global warming. Okay, what is the difference between weather and climate? I said it earlier. Weather is short time climate, like weather changing, and climate is a long term, 25 to 30 weather changing. A lot of people mix between weather and climate, but they are totally different, I promise. The forecast of the climate by the average, as I told you, of 30, and here it's only by collecting statistical data of a few days. The study of climate is called climatology, and the study of weather called meteorology. The components of the climate is, of course, more wide than the components of the weather because of the time frame. It's bigger, so you cannot have small details like the sunshine, the rain, the cloud cover. I mean, this very much detailed description of the weather is not possible in the climate because we're talking about massive number and huge amount of data around the 30 years. Now I just want to speak about the general impacts of climate change after we understood the science of it. So first of all, there is climatic impacts and non-climatic impacts. And the climatic impacts is talking about different, first of all, sectors that might actually be impacted by climate change. And by that, I mean the health sector, the agricultural sector, the forest sector, the water resources sector. The coastal areas will be very much impacted, and also the species and natural areas and different biodiversity. There is, of course, the food consumption. There is also the quality of air. There is a lot of things that have different impact by the climate change. And of course, the sea level will rise because of the melting of the glaciers, and the temperature will go very much high up. This is Lake Chad, which is a lake in the African country which is called Chad. This is the picture of the lake in 1963, and this is the picture after 10 years, and this is the picture after like 13 years from this picture, and this is in 2001. Look how much small the lake is comparing to the 60s. Unfortunately, now it's almost disappearing. You can walk it very easily. It's there's almost no water anymore now in 2022. Also, the melting of snow. This is the Kilimanjaro mountain in Tanzania. This is in 1912, and this is in 2002. You can see the difference. And now, after 20 years of this picture, the ice is almost just here. Unfortunately, we don't have an updated one, but the ice is only here in the top. I hope you can see the arrow where I am pointing. Of course, the coastal reefs will be very much impacted by the rise of the sea level, but also by the rise of the temperature of the seas. And of course, the floods is very much one of the areas that are the impacts of climate change. And these pictures are unfortunately from Sudan. We've been hit by several floods in the past 10 years. And normally the difference between the flood and another is between 10 and 15 years, but lately it became almost every year or every 2 years. Drought is, of course, one of the very much, it's either too much water, so we have flood, or too little water, so we have drought. And of course, drought is a very big threat for food security, for water security, and human security, because normally places where there's drought, there is conflicts. The desertification is very much linked to the drought itself, and by cutting the vegetation cover for different livelihood sectors and etc. like this. Yes, these are wind storms, or we call it habub in Sudanese language, and it shows also how much climate change is impacting not only our in like cities or forests, but also bringing dust from other areas in massive sizes like this. This is a very big hotel in Khartoum, and you can see the size of the dust storm, and here the sky is totally covered, and also here. I am taking Sudan as an example because Sudan is one of the very vulnerable countries to climate changes. I think number 6 when it comes to climate vulnerability. This is desertification. You can see the sand dunes on the Nile. So this is the Nile, and this is the sand dunes almost choking the Nile. Well, of course, there's still a lot of people who doubt having climate change, but I don't think this is a place to question having a climate change or not. This increasing of the sea level and the different impacts, the fires in the woods, the cyclones, the hurricanes, and etc. etc. Okay. Well, climate change impact more than just the weather or the situation we have. It impacts the livelihood. So people who work in the fisheries will not be able to work. The farmers will not be able to work. The infrastructure will be destroyed. And I gathered all of this in a very concrete 2 slides. And this will be my last slide before taking the floor back to you, actually. Sorry, drawing the concept took a long time from us. We now talked about the climatic factors, which is the flood, the desertification, the drought, and etc. But we can also talk about the non-climatic factors, which is the factors that we actually need to talking about the social part of the impacts of climate change. And then from this slide, we can go to a discussion on yes. Okay, so severe poverty, resources mismanagement, lack of income diversity, conflict over natural resources, lack of services, displacement of communities, gap in policies and legislations, etc., etc. All of these are the non-climatic factors contributing to the climate vulnerability, not only in Sudan, but around the world, because the whole world is suffering from climate change, especially the developing countries. And these are the main sectors, that non-climatic sectors, that actually impact that. I am hereby sending back the floor to our moderator, and I can keep this slide open if anyone wants to have more discussion on that. And as I told you, I mean, this is 45 minutes. I promised to talk only 40, but anyway, and we are only talking about the science behind climate change. We didn't even talk about different bodies and international bodies of climate change. We didn't talk about sustainability. We didn't talk about renewable energy. I mean, it's, as I told you, I need a full 5 weeks to cover all of what's mentioned. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nisreen. It was really wonderful hearing you out. And a lot of good information came through on the very high level, of course. But yeah, I think it was quite insightful. And the data really shows us a lot that we can go to what kind of depth to really understand the science behind climate, and then of course the green transformation perspective. So thanks for giving the floor back to us. And then of course I would like to facilitate some sort of questions coming in, and I really encourage audience to post your questions more if you have anything in your line. I'm seeing that quite a few are coming now slowly, but yeah, let me start with few of them which are already for us, Nisreen, and then so far we am seeing 8 to 9 questions which we can answer in the time frame what we have. Take the question from Mr. Vijayan there. The question is that, Nisreen, that what is the normal energy, what is expected from the sun to be reaching to the earth actually, if there are no greenhouse effect exist hypothetically? Unmute might be.
Yes, let's gather like 3 questions and then I answer 3.
Oh, okay, sure. Okay, and then Another important thing which I was asked by Mr. Vijayan is that what is the reason of the mathematics what we were shown, right? That across the earth the temperature could be zero around when the net temperature. So why it is to be zero? What is the science behind to be zero? The overall temperature of the earth. That is another one. And we have any kind of details regarding any alternative green gases in the electrical power switchgear insulation medium beside SF6 gas? That is another question we have.
Thank you very much. I think the questions I got are from engineers. These are very engineering questions. Okay, first of all, the normal energy from the sun is in the picture that I showed you in the presentation. Yet the idea is not how much Earth is getting, because the normal situation, Earth will get amount and then absorb what's needed, and then like get the extra energy out back to the space. And this is not happening now because of the greenhouse gases. So the problem is not how much coming in, the problem is how much not needed is going out. If all of the what's not needed is going out, then we will not have a global warming, because we will only absorb what we need and the rest will go. Just like the vitamins, if you have too much vitamins, your body will absorb what's needed and then discharge the rest of your body. But if you had too many oil, for example, or fats, then your body will absorb what's needed, but will not be able to discharge the rest, and that's what cause the problem of the cholesterol, for example, of people who have high cholesterol, and then they will take medications, etc., etc. So this is the actual problem. Also with sugar, not everyone is diabetic. Diabetic who are only taking a lot of sugar, and then the body is not able to discharge the extra sugar, and that's how a person became a diabetic. But the problem is not how much the earth need or how much the earth get. The problem is how much the earth don't need and actually able to reflect back to the universe. But the amount by UNEP is 343 watt per square meter, and absorbed by the earth, and normally is 168 watt per square meter. But it's not talking about how much reflected outside, and that's the actual problem that we have. Regarding the second question on if the alternatives of the SF6 gases, there is alternatives. They are a bit expensive, but they exist, and there's a slow, but it's happening, shift from the SF6 gases to more green and sustainable gases. And the FCs, the chlorofluorocarbons, is banned internationally, but unfortunately some companies are still using it, but it's banned internationally because the CFCs actually have other problem, which is destroying the ozone, and this is a different topic, the ozone gap. Yeah, I hope I answered the three questions.
Yeah, pretty much. Thanks for, I think you covered another question. So is there any particular logic behind the 0-degree calculation of Earth temperature, or is it just
yes, of course. The ABC science says that if you are talking about equilibrium, then the total sum should be 0. If there is no equilibrium, then of course the total will not be 0. But we are talking about the equilibrium status of the Earth, and that should definitely be 0.
Another question, Nisreen, we have is that regarding, interesting one actually, that during the COVID impact now, we see a lot of disruption happen throughout the world. So is there any details of the studies that what is the impact of global warming, or what is the mitigation thing happened as a part of COVID? Is it improved? Is it
guys, we said climate means 25 years or 30 years minimum. So in order to have a sustainable impact regarding the global warming, you also need to have lockdown for 30 years. So remember that when we talk about it might, yes, COVID had, the lockdown had a huge impact on the weather, because we're talking about the short-term temperature, the short-term air quality, etc., etc. But when we talk about climate, then we talk about 25 years to 30 years minimum. So we cannot, even if there's impact of COVID, we cannot really know it now on climate. We will know it on weather, but we'll not know it in climate until 30 years of the COVID. So ask me again in 2050 if I'm still there.
Thank you. A few more questions. We have a couple of one are correlated, like Mr. Salahuddin and Irshad, and some more people have talked about that. We, as a community of project managers, you know, as a project management professionals, what role do you see that what our community can do in terms of helping this kind of sustainable measures, or some sort of examples where we can play some role in climate change? Would you throw some light on that, that what you expect, how do you see these things happening with us?
Of course, first of all, climate change impacts the project management, and the project management can also impact the climate. How climate change is impact project management is, number one, with climate change, because climate change is unpredictable. You cannot manage anything. Whatever you put as a plan, you will have a plan B, plan C, plan D, and all of them might not work, because you might have a sudden change in the, because of climate change, and everything get ruined. For example, if you have a project to build a bridge, and the time frame for that project is 2 years, and then you had flood this year, and then you had flood the next year, and then when you started building the bridge, before it's finished, then again you had a flood, so it's almost not possible. If you have a master plan for developing a city, for example, or for agricultural business, for example, or project, and then suddenly you had drought and you had no water to irrigate your project. I mean, it's very hard to manage anything where there is so much variabilities, where there's so much unpredicted things like climate change. So that's how climate change is impacting the project management. But the opposite, which is how project management can impact climate change, is first of all, when you are actually planning for the project, you need to consider climate risks. You need to consider insurance, climate insurance. You also need to consider that the design of the project itself should be green. So only work on projects that work on renewable energies, for example, and not projects that deals with fossil fuel. Only work sustainable, so reduce using paper in your project management system and use the electronic system. Advise your team to always reduce the consumption of the energy, but also their behavior can also change to more sustainable behavior. But the most important is that the project itself should have environmental responsibility sector within the project design. And for me, for example, I don't work in any project if there's no part that deals with environment and with climate change, at least as part of the social responsibility of the companies, for example, as part of the sustainability plan of the company, but also to make the projects more friendly to the environment and more friendly to the planet.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think that was a very meaningful answer, because it's more or less a collective responsibility, just not on the companies, but as an individual. What one important question, what has I can read is from Mr. Salahuddin, is that if any other more natural remedies exist which can help us reduction of carbon emission?
Well, actually, the answer for this question is very much taking us back to the past, when people used to use fabric as bags instead of plastic, when people used to cycle instead of ride cars and fly, etc., etc. But the good thing is there is always way where we can actually absorb the carbon that we make. The problem is now the amount of the emissions is by far bigger than the amount of the absorbed carbon. So if we actually manage to have equilibrium, again reaching zero, between the emissions that we are producing and the for example trees that we planted to absorb, then it's exactly the way we want it, and it should the way it should be. So reaching again the zero carbon emission by maybe yes, producing carbon, but at the same time absorbing it, is going to be the only way to keep developing at the same time to conserve the planet.
Yeah, yeah. We have one more questions coming here now. Yeah, I think Mr. Sajid has mentioned an important point that he's made a point, like there's a statement like Earth is reduced from its boundary. How does that relate to climate change and global warming? Is the Earth is really reducing, first of all? And if it is it the cause is only the global warming and climate or something else? What do you think? Nisreen?
Yes, I didn't understand what does it mean by Earth is reduced.
I think what they mean is that possibly is that are we shrinking? Are we shrinking
No,
in
we're not.
just not in physical body, but as a heavenly body, whatever you can say there, and as a planet, are our boundaries shrinking as a part of
Actually,
climate change?
from a physical, it is totally physics, and
Mm.
actually more of astronomy than physics. We are actually expanding. We are not shrinking.
Ah, okay. Interesting, actually. Okay. Okay. I think pretty good answers coming through. We have a couple of more questions, like, for example, looking at the recent changes of electrical vehicles now coming into the play. Do you feel that those are enough for reducing the emissions part? Of course, we know that they are not super cheap to be get affordable by anybody so far. But is it sufficient, or something more has to be done, just not electric vehicle, to reduce our levels?
Can you come again?
Sure. So the question was around electrical vehicle,
Yes,
electrical.
yes, I remembered now. Sorry, I got distracted for a second. So with electric vehicles, there's normally three questions. First question is, where are we getting the lithium for the battery? Are we getting it from mining, which also makes another environmental problems like the desertification just to mine lithium, and illegal mining, and a lot of chemical work just to get the lithium out of the other minerals, etc., etc. So the lithium extraction is a huge problem, and the materials for using energy for storing energy is also still a big concern and problem. The second question is, do we have enough infrastructure in the world to have electric vehicles? I mean, I know UAE and Dubai have huge and very nice infrastructure for electric vehicles, but I mean, many countries in Africa, in Asia, in Latin America doesn't even have roads for electric vehicles, and it will be very hard to find charging stations. Not mentioning that many countries have huge electricity problem itself. I mean, speaking about Sudan, only 30% of the population have access to electricity. So unless if you are talking about solar cars, then it will be very hard to charge the electric vehicles in many of the developing countries. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Uh, I think I would take a few more before we wrap up the further session. Nisreen, in your opinion, how actually is imperative for the green innovation policies in this world? Is it sufficient to support the development of generic technologies, which basically the new upgrowing firms can build upon? Is this sufficient with us in terms of innovation?
Yeah. I think discovering technology and developing in technological knowledge is one of the reasons why we have global warming in the first place. But also, I am sure that technology can be the answer for the problem that it's caused in the first place. And that's why I say definitely yes. I think we will at some point. I'm not sure how or who, but I am sure that the answer for the problem that we're living in right now will also include big technological sector.
Good. Okay, we have one question from Sanket. How is the climate change and global warming and its impacts are used in project management?
I think I answered that question earlier, but I can come again and say that it's two ways impact. Climate change impacts project management, but also project management can impact climate change, and it might help the communities and build their resilience, but it can also destroy the environment if the project was not environmentally friendly in its design and implementation, of course.
Sure, good. Yep, I think we have a lot of questions already answered there already. Is it the last one? Could it be? What are you saying? What do scientists says? Okay, I think pretty much. I think very important that we understood that project management has a role to play. That was one important aspect of the discussion. Some of the key takeaways, definitely what I learned is just not that climate change and global warming. I think that was very important point which you brought it up. Otherwise, people mix it most of the time, and then we understand that global warming is one of the causes of the climate change, just not the one cause, right? That was one very good takeaway for me, actually. And then, of course, another important aspect which is not naturally comes is that the gases, the things what you showed in the pie chart is that PCF, HCF and SF6 are more dangerous than CO2s and CH4s. I think that was an eye-opener, because normally when we think about gases, okay, we prominently think about carbon dioxides and methanes, but that was important aspect and important point that you raised it, that just not the quantity what we see is that basically the type of gases also play an important role, and if they increase in the constitution, I think the impact will be much more bigger and much more fatal. Very important. Thank you so much, Nisreen. I really appreciate your time, and before we end the session, we would like to invite all of our audience for another webinar going down the line on October 13. Our speaker will be Mr. Sharif Al-Gandhi, who will talk us through topic with strategic planning management. You may visit the event page of PMI UAE website. Definitely register yourself. And a big shout out to our friends and the marketing team at PMI UAE chapter who are responsible for posting all the relevant information in our social media platforms and our event page in the PMI UAE website. As we close this webinar tonight, I would like to thank you all for your attendance, participation, and we won't say good night without saying thank you to the rest of the PMI UAE chapter volunteers who have always been behind the successful webinars like these. Includes our colleagues from membership, outreach, volunteering, finance and governance. All these people are definitely play a role which we don't see otherwise in the front. Until we next webinar together, I think with my colleague behind the camera, Olimudu, and then our director of events, Rosanna. This is Anchal, wishing you all pleasant evening. And thank you so much, Nisreen, for being the part of this webinar and discussion and giving us insightful information to our audience and participants. Thank you so much and appreciate it. Goodbye. Thank you.